Hello everyone, Brian Kibler here with another in my video series for StarCityGames.com, and as you can see on your screen, I am once again playing Temur. However, as you can probably tell, there's a few different things about this particular version of Temur that are new that I'm trying out. So I wanted to experiment and see what I could do. The big difference here is the main deck has Stubborn Denial. I've gone back and forth between Stubborn Denial in the main deck, Stubborn Denial in the sideboard, since very early on. Like my actual very initial version of Temur that I built had Stubborn Denial in the main deck, and it's a very, very powerful card. There's lots of relatively inefficient removal spells that people are playing in the format, things like Abzan Charm, things like Jeskai Charm, things like Hero's Downfall. Being able to counter them for 1 mana with Stubborn Denial is extremely powerful. And basically, the least impressive card in the deck, again, in a lot of matchups, has been Temur Charm. Temur Charm is a reasonable card in every matchup. It's a card that does a variety of things. It's very flexible, but it's not particularly efficient. It costs 3, and in an aggressive deck, 3 is a lot of mana. And in particular, 3 is a lot of mana to be holding up on your opponent's turn. You can do things like play hold up Boon Satyr with Temur Charm as well, but ultimately, you really want to be tapping your mana and doing things proactively, and Temur Charm doesn't really line up with that. So I instead, playing Stubborn Denial allows me to just play as proactively as possible and use Stubborn Denial to protect my creatures and try and stay ahead. Stubborn Denial is a card that was in the sideboard, lived in the sideboard for a long time, and it's very powerful in the matchups where it's good. The reason that I was playing Temur Charm primarily over it originally was that Stubborn Denial didn't line up very well against all the other green decks in the format. Decks like Green Devotion, decks like Constellation. Temur Charm is excellent against those decks because you can use either its fight mode or its can't block mode or its counter mode, and all of them are very effective, whereas Stubborn Denial frequently just doesn't really have that many things to counter, if any, against things like Green Devotion. You will frequently find yourself completely without opportunities to use Stubborn Denial. But those decks have largely gone out of the metagame. We see a lot more sort of stuff like the Jeskai Heroic combo decks. You have other aggressive decks that have their own selection of spells that they use for tempo. Things like or mid-range decks like Mardu, lots of Planeswalkers, things like that. And against those decks, Stubborn Denial is incredible. It's one of the best possible cards to have in your deck. So this is really sort of just a reworking of where cards are in the list. The Stubborn Denial in the main deck is very powerful against that particular swath of the metagame, whereas Temur Charm not so much. So Temur Charm was something that I was using to kind of hedge my bets. It's a reasonable card against control decks, a reasonable card against aggressive decks, not great against any of them. This version of the deck is much more geared toward beating decks that are more spell heavy, frankly. And even against decks that aren't necessarily super spell heavy, it's still just an incredibly powerful tempo play when you can pull it off. Whereas Temur Charm, unless you're countering something like a Hornet Queen, or something like that, specifically Hornet Queen is basically the big thing, or like an Arbor Colossus or something like that, then Stubborn Denial is just going to be better, at everything that you want to be doing with that Temur Charm. And you can get draws that you are able to like protect your Savage Knuckleblade, protect an Ashclad Phoenix or something, and just kill your opponent quite easily, thanks to being able to protect your creature with Stubborn Denial. So that's really the sort of main shift here. The other thing is I've tried to make the deck a little bit less painful. One of the problems that I had previously was just, there were some games where you just died of Mana Confluence. And, I had 3 copies of Mana Confluence in the deck originally. I cut down to 1. I've also replaced the Temple of Epiphanies with Temple of Abandons. I've sort of shifted the way the mana goes there, and then added 2 copies of Shivan Reef. So the deck is a little worse at producing green mana on turn 1. You have 2 fewer green sources untapped on turn 1. I've cut down to 3 Elvish Mystics, so the importance of the turn 1 green mana is at least a little bit lower, because there's not 4 Elvish Mystics. It's possible that even like 2 may be correct, but Mystic is just very, very powerful. You still have, what, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14 possible ways to get green source in turn 1, is that correct? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No, it's 12, sorry. So a little bit less than I'd normally like for a deck that wants to play turn 1 a mana creature, but I only have 3 Elvish Mystics in the deck to play on turn 1, so the odds that things don't line up are not as painful. So But otherwise, the deck's pretty much the same. Literally, the difference from the main deck, at least, from my previous versions, is that I cut 2 copies of Temur Charm and cut Sarkhan, who is good, but again, sort of like not an incredible card. and being able to play to the Stubborn Denial plan, you want to just have creatures that are always creatures, and just 3 copies of Stubborn Denial in the main deck is I feel like a good place to start trying at least. So no Temur Charms. The other possible thing is I actually may want to cut like 1 Crater's Claws for like another creature, something like that, just because having as many reactive cards as are in the deck right now is a little higher than I'd like, I think. But I'm going to start here at least. You don't want to, when you're making changes, you don't necessarily want to do tons of things at a time. You want to sort of incrementally make changes and see, okay, is this working, things like that. But anyway, moving Stubborn Denial from the main deck or into the main deck also opens up a lot of sideboard room. So I'm trying some new sideboard cards here. I have 1 copy of Nissa and 2 copies of Chandra. Those are cards that I haven't played with in my sideboard before. Chandra's a card that is very, very powerful against any sort of control or mid-range deck. The ability to continually just get free cards each turn is really nice. It also happens to line up pretty well against decks that are making 1/1 creatures. We've seen the token style decks that with Jeskai Ascendancy or not, where Chandra can be pretty powerful there. Against decks like the Mardu decks with Hordling Outburst, Chandra is an excellent card in general against Mardu because it is a card advantage machine that they have to be able to deal with. Plus, it actually lines up pretty well against their 1/1 creatures. So kind of like that there. And then the Nissa is pretty much the best possible card against control decks, like against something like Esper or Blue-White Control. It also lines up really well with Stubborn Denial. Being able to make a guy a 4/4 creature with Nissa gives you, just with Nissa itself, single activation turns on Stubborn Denials, which is also really powerful. And then I've cut a little bit down on Hunt the Hunters. Again, I think that the sort of green Constellation style or Devotion style decks have fallen a little bit out of favor, which means that Hunt the Hunter is not as important as it once was. And I'm playing 2 copies of Reclamation Sage. I tried those last week, and they never really ran into any decks where they were particularly relevant, though I didn't really play many actual competitive games of Magic in that video series. But I think this is a pretty powerful card. It definitely helps make up some of the room against Constellation style decks with Hunt the Hunter gone. Probably a more powerful card against some of those decks too. It's also potentially valuable against decks with Springleaf Drum and Jeskai Ascendancy. It is a value way to kill those, and that can be pretty good. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take this version for a spin and see how it does. I'm actually going to be probably playing quite a bit of Standard the upcoming week because I am playing the Grand Prix in San Antonio. So this is certainly the base that I'm going to start from in my testing there, and we'll see how it goes. So let's get to it.